Okay, so in this video, I want to ask you guys a question. I want to ask you guys, how do you feel about kind of the laugh track that is commonly heard in the sitcom genre? Now, of course, the sitcom genre is, of course, the TV genre which is associated with kind of comedies. Now, I want to ask you guys, do you feel the laugh track is it fitting for more modern sitcoms, or do you feel it's kind of outdated? So before I go into this video, I'm going to explain what a laugh track is. A laugh track is commonly known in kind of sitcoms that were set heavy. Now, sitcoms that were kind of filmed in front of a live audience. So in this case, in those cases, those type of sitcoms, it was filmed in a live audience. So whenever a joke, a prank, kind of something humorous happened with the actors, with the characters, they would often try to kind of create a response for the audience. So often in cases, a laugh track was inserted, and that of course would actually help the kind of joke and would help the audience to actually laugh at the writing and the humor of the show. And now often cases in these kind of live shows and these kind of set type sitcoms, they'd often record the kind of audience reaction in order to do so, to create kind of more organic, more real kind of laughing track. That's why laughing tracks are more common in sitcoms, is because they were actually filmed in front of a live audience. And they use laughing tracks to kind of encourage the laughs and try to encourage the actual writing of the show. What I want to do is I want to talk about my own personal relationship with laughing tracks and how I feel they've kind of fitted in with kind of like comedies in the sitcoms in the 80s and the 90s and of course the early 2000s and of course as of present day. So what I'm going to do is go in with my own experience on sitcoms I've enjoyed over the years and how I've felt about the laughing track. Now, I myself watched a lot of kind of reruns of 80s sitcoms, and I remember Cheers, that was on quite a few times, and I remember Married with Children was also kind of reran quite a few times as well, and of course there was Only Fools and Horses, which to this day is still kind of rerun several times. And these three sitcoms, they all had, of course, the laughing track. And I remember to myself that these are the type of shows that are timeless. These are the type of sitcoms that have aged kind of perfectly, that you can go back and laugh to. They're the type of sitcom in which the laugh track is there, but it doesn't affect the show, it doesn't affect the narrative. It just blends really well. And I never had a problem with the laughing track because I was so engrossed with the characters and so engrossed with the narrative of each of these kind of sitcoms. And I remember the 90s being bigger and more popular for sitcoms. And I remember I would watch these sitcoms as they came out rather than being reruns. And I remember following these shows and being really engrossed with these shows. So I remember watching Everyone Loves Raymond. I remember watching Friends. I remember watching Father Ted. I remember watching Frasier. I remember watching Sister Sister. I remember watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I remember, and all these great 90s sitcoms, all these had laughing tracks in them. And I remember this was a point in my life where laughing tracks to me almost felt like watching like a foreign film in which they're there, like subtitles, they're there, but after a point you ignore the fact that there's subtitles. You get so engrossed with the characters, you get so engrossed with the narrative and the story that the idea of subtitles is unexisting. And that's, to me, was the same with kind of 90s sitcom. That the laughing track is there, but I have kind of lost the idea of the laughing track because I feel I've been engrossed into it, and I felt back in the 90s that this was natural. This was so common to have a laughing track in it. So I never felt irritated with the laughing track. I never felt annoyed with the laughing track. I never felt compelled to change the channel or turn off the program. I was always kind of satisfied with the laughing track in the sitcoms of the 90s. And I remember a absolute game changer in the early 2000s, and that of course was Malcolm in the Middle. And this was groundbreaking for me because this was a sitcom that crossed the fourth wall and was kind of done on real locations that were less set driven. And I remember the kind of laughs and the humor of the show was kind of more practical heavy, and that was really interesting. I remember not the jokes felt more humorous, more funny, and it felt unique knowing that the laughing track wasn't there, and it almost felt like such a game changer, such an evolution to the sitcom genre, because previously, whenever you heard a joke and whenever a pun was heard, all of a sudden you almost had this will to laugh. You felt encouraged to laugh. You felt like you had to laugh because the laughing track would play afterwards. But with Malcolm in the Middle, you laughed at what you found funny. So you had this newfound freedom, and it was really interesting. You had this kind of freedom to laugh at what you found funny. And once again, this new wave of kind of sitcoms, I remember seeing it again, once again, in the likes of Scrubs, and that was an hilarious show. That was really funny and really heartfelt. And once again, it didn't have a laughing track to it. And the lack of a laughing track really worked for Scrubs, because there's moments where Scrubs got kind of really kind of emotional, and the not having the laughing track really did help drive those moments, drive those scenes. And if it did have a laughing track, it just didn't quite work. It wouldn't have quite worked at all. Now, early 2000s, there was quite a lot of other shows that continued to not use kind of the laughing track. There was, of course, the likes of Arrested Development. I know in the mid 2000s, of course, there was 30 Rock. I know The Office, the UK version, and of course the US version, they didn't actually use the laughing track either. Now, the laughing track was never absent in the years 2000s, the mid 2000s. There was quite a few sitcoms that still relied on, of course, the laughing track. Shows like Black Books, shows like The IT Crowd, of course, shows like The Big Bang Theory. They all used the laughing track, and for the most part, it actually suited their type of show. It actually worked with their type of show. So in saying that, I mean, the laughing track wasn't completely dead, and it still worked with these selected comedies. But I myself was kind of moving away from the idea of having laughing tracks in sitcoms. I remember seeing the likes of My Name is Earl and appreciating how much that show benefited without having a laughing track in it. I remember the likes of Community as well. Once again, a great, wonderful gem of a TV show that didn't actually use laughing track and benefited from not using it either. So we were in a weird point in the 2000s in which we did have sitcoms that chose to evolve and step forward and advance the genre with the idea of not using, of course, the laughing track. And then we had shows that kind of played into nostalgia and a more familiar kind of feel, which shows that did use the laughing track. Now, I feel like shows like Always Sunny would not be as great with a laughing track. Like, certain shows would benefit from using a laughing track and others not so much. Now, of present day, we have certain shows that still use the laughing track, and we have shows like Two Broke Girls, we have Baby Daddies, that use the kind of laughing track. And then we have shows like The Goldbergs and, of course, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which, of course, don't use the laughing track. So I myself feel like the laughing track is slightly outdated. I mean, we have seen an evolution in sitcoms, and we've seen an evolution in the sitcom genre, in which we've seen a massive evolution, a massive jump forward in comedies. We've seen comedies that have become more advanced in terms of locations and in terms of talent, and have kind of moved away from the kind of familiar set pieces that the older sitcoms done in the 80s and 90s. And I feel that we should move on from the kind of laughing track that has been kind of associated with the past. And I feel it just seems a little dated, and it just puts me out of comedies these days. I feel like certain shows, more modern sitcoms that use laughing tracks, they just feel uneven. They just feel like shows that are kind of playing into audience. Shows that aren't really confident in their own writing, that they still have to use laughing tracks in it. I feel like shows that don't use laughing track, they feel more confident. They're shows that they feel like they have strength in their writing, and they don't really need to rely on the laughing track. So I myself, I loved the laughing track back in the 80s and the 90s and most of the mid 2000s, but I feel as of now, as of 2017, we do not need the laughing track in sitcoms. Now, I want to hear your opinion on the laughing track in sitcoms. Do you feel it's outdated? Do you feel that it still belongs in modern sitcom, or do you feel like it never belonged whatsoever? Put that down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and subscribe to the channel if you like what you see.